Welcome, everybody, to episode 227 of The Ball is Round. I am your host, Elias Grigoriadis, and on the show today, CF Montreal picks up their second win of the season, finally, at long last, in a road trip to Houston. The Montreal Roses keep their spot at the top of the Northern Super League, and the Canadian men's national team gets ready for one of the most important Gold Cup runs they've ever had. With me to discuss all this and a whole lot more is the lead MLS editor for Give Me Sport, my good friend Olivier Nevin. Olivier, thank you so much for stopping by. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. This reminds me of our podcasting days back in the day
We
at
did used
the
to have
link.
one hell of a
Yeah,
podcast. Shout out to Pressbox Hat Trick. Shout out to all the current and former hosts, and that was awesome.
yeah,
Um, how was your international break? Did you survive? Did you manage? Everyone's got different relationships with the international break.
yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of international breaks, but I do understand and accept that they're necessary. This last one for Canada was pretty fun. At least the win against Ukraine was really cool. Um, and yeah, we have the Gold Cup coming up, so it's an exciting time to be a Canadian soccer fan. Um, yeah, so there's a lot going on right now. With the Club World Cup having started yesterday, and then we still have some MLS action that we're obviously going to talk about. So yeah, it's a good time to be a soccer fan. It's a good time to be a Canadian soccer fan.
Absolutely. And we'll get to that all of that and a whole lot more. Before we start, again, huge thank you to everybody who responded to our midseason report card, who gave their thoughts, their 2 cents. It was really fun to kind of put that all together and get everyone's thoughts maybe out in the open and to see really where the fans see the value for where the fans are pleased and displeased. Again, you could see all that on our Patreon for free. So definitely go and check that out. But the midseason is over. The second half of the season has started, and CF Montreal are in Houston. And let's go ahead and take a look at the starting 11 for that match. In goal, we have Sirois, and then a back line of Neal and Campbell at center back, Petrasso and Bugai out wide, and then Tom Pierce, who now has seemed to have found his home at left on the left side of the midfield, with Guboglu on the other side. Two players in the center of the midfield are Luturi and Piet. And then, well, if you call it a second striker, proper striker, a 10, I don't know what it is, but Caden Clark was in the middle of all of that. And of course, Prince Owusu up top. When you saw the starting 11, Ollie, what was your reaction? Are you surprised? I mean, given the state of maybe the squad and how many people are missing?
Yeah, I was a little surprised because it looked kind of defensive, right? Seeing two fullbacks, their natural positions are fullbacks in Kuboglu and Pierce playing higher up the pitch with two fullbacks in their positions behind them in Bugai and Petrasso. It was very very funny to see. I was super interested in seeing how it was going to work out. Now neither Kuboglu or Pierce are known for the defensive work anyway, so it's not like they're defensive fullbacks playing up high. And it seemed to work because those are two guys. Guboglu, who's really good one-on-one and able to create space for himself. Pierce, who can deliver a heck of a ball with his left foot. Um, and it seemed to work out. Is this something that's sustainable? Maybe not. Once we're back, once we have all the players back from international break and stuff, I'm not sure this is the starting formation you're going to see week in, week out. But I thought it was interesting the situation with the fullbacks, and then Caden Clark with a great performance, a bit of a throwback performance, something
Yeah.
we saw a lot from him last year. Um, but working off of Owusu, kind of like what he did with Joseph Martinez last year. So maybe there's something there that Donadell unlocked with this kind of lineup choice. So I thought it was super interesting, but it turned out to be a winning formula.
Yeah, I mean, well, especially when you look at the amount of players missing, there's 8 players that are currently unavailable. Duke, Yankov, Herbers, and obviously Sinchuk are all out with injury.
Hmm.
And then you've got Jack Mavrioni, who was suspended after his red card against the Revolution. And you also have Joel Waterman, Nathan Saliba, and Dante Seeley, um, who were with their respective national teams. Now, when you see this laundry list of players and some really important players, people that have carved out their role in the squad,
Mm.
What were your expectations going even before the lineup, just going into a game like this on the road in the heat of Houston? It was like 40 degrees or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have any hope?
Um, not necessarily. I think that's easy to say for any game with CF Montreal this year, but especially this now. Houston Dynamo are not a great team in MLS this year. They've had some moments here and there, but they're especially bad at home, and we were reminded of that yesterday. So did I necessarily have hope going into it, especially seeing this kind of lineup that was put together with duct tape and stuff? Not really, but the result was legit, right? They did not get a lucky win. They completely deserved that. So that was cool to see, right? Like, a game where they played really well and were rewarded for it. Because how often have we heard this year that we played well, we had our chances, we controlled possession, but the bounces didn't go in our favor or whatever, whatever. This time there were no excuses of that sort. Things worked out the way they were supposed to. CF Montreal was rewarded with goals, with a win away from home for their good play.
Yeah, it's almost like they treated Houston like the CF Montreal. You've seen the teams do this to
Yeah.
Montreal how many times now? But this is probably one of the first times that we've seen Montreal willingly just give up the ball for so
Hmm.
many for such a long stretch of time. And it really does remind me of last year's early run of good form where Samuel Piet kind of admitted at the beginning of last season where he said, look, we're not going to be looking to dominate the ball. We're looking to make sure first and foremost that we are solid at the back, and then we will start to take what we can get. And that really is what it felt like. And you know what? If
Yeah.
that's what you need to do, especially on the road, I don't think anyone's going to complain if this is the kind of result that you're going to go and get. Um, Speaking of which, right? Let's start right with the back line with the defense. Joe Waterman not there. You got the same fullbacks that you've pretty much had since Marco Donadel took over, but
Hmm.
I think all the eyes are on this Jalen Neal and George Campbell combo because we haven't seen
Yeah.
them enough. Joel Waterman is there, and obviously someone of his stature, new contract, he's going to eat up a lot of minutes. And then Jalen Neal also has his injury problems. He was training with a knee brace up until the game, really. Um, what did you make of that kind of partnership? Because it just looks right.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It did look right, and it felt really good to. I think what works really well with them is like they're both big athletic players who are also really good on the ball.
Mhm.
So they can move around, and I think Waterman's pretty good with that stuff too. But Neil and Campbell, stick out with those specific attributes. And I think we saw that whether it was their ability to stay on their man, follow them around, keep up with them with pace, or distribute the ball from the back, even carrying it out of the back. We saw a couple times. Campbell loves to do that, but Neil is especially good at it as well. And I think that brings a certain kind of control to the back line that I don't know if we've seen too often this year. So I think in your strongest 11, Joel Waterman is in there because he's probably the team's best defender. But to have Neil and Campbell to choose from, or even if you have to play them together, like we like CF Montreal has had to do now, and until the Gold Cup is done, like that's a great kind of fallback option as we saw yesterday. I think that it has a lot of potential. They complement each other very well, and yeah, I thought it worked very well for
Yeah,
a
I mean,
Houston team that can score. They have
they,
some
they can score, and there
talented
was a lot
talented
of
offensive
questions asked about.
players. Yeah, they have some top talented attackers, and the back line responded.
Yeah, I honestly, again, Joel Waterman may have taken maybe a bit of a step back this year when you compare it to just how strong he was last year. But people
Hmm.
calling for him to be benched, I think it's a bit premature. What I do like is the
Agreed.
fact that this is a very real conundrum that Marco Donadel has on his hands. This is not like oh yeah, you'll throw Neil a couple minutes here or there, or you'll throw Campbell. No, these are all three center backs that have now shown that they can play at a starting MLS level.
Yeah.
Not going to go so far as to say they're all stars or anything, but they are
No.
definitely above average and they're all doing the job. And Joel Waterman is has essentially gotten into like that third or fourth string center back role with the national team as well.
Mm.
Um, I still understand how George Campbell hasn't been called up to the American team, but again, you know what? They've got their own problems, so I'm not going to
Yeah.
complain. that you've got that. I mean, Maro, you know, commenting, I disagree. I think Campbell and Neal in the best 11 area duo. That's the thing, right? All three of them fit, and I don't want them to go back to three in the back because that's
Mm,
not Donadell's style, and I don't think that's going to be for the
no.
best. I also don't want Joe Waterman at right back because that's just a whole other bag
Mm,
of cats. So again, this is a
yeah,
good problem to have. You have too many people that are overperforming, so it's better than having not enough people like
it
in
is.
other
And
positions.
and
But
listen, this duo is probably going to get a good run here
yeah,
together, right? So when after 2-3 games, we might have a new starting center back pairing, and when Waterman comes back, he might have to sit out a bit, or might have to play off the bench, or they might try to fit him into the midfield, as we've seen, to varying levels of success. Um, but Maro might be onto something here, and I guess we'll see. We'll see, right, in a few weeks, like, because if they've developed some chemistry, if this is your best
mhm.
starting duo in the back, then you kind of got to roll with it, regardless of who that player is that you're leaving out.
Yeah, people got to remember also that's how George Campbell broke into the 11, right?
Yeah,
Gabriela Corbo got hurt last year. He was out for a bit, and then Campbell made that spot his own, and he didn't let it go. So
yeah,
again, especially when it comes to center backs, you have to make every second count, and Jalen Neal has definitely done that. Um, just to touch quickly on the fullbacks because I feel like they've become arguably one of the most consistent spots on the field for Montreal.
mm,
Um, David Bugay did not see the light of day
no,
up until you know up until Marco Donadell took over and they switched. How much of the fact that he's the only conventional right back, like natural right back on the team, how much of that has helped him establish himself?
yeah. I mean, it obviously plays right into his hands. Marco Darnell almost doesn't have a choice but to play him. But it's paying off, right? Like, I think you give a player like that some runway, and they can run with it sometimes, and that's what we're seeing right now. I think obviously competition in the squad is a good thing, and the best clubs in the world have competition for important spots on the team sheet. But also, I think there are certain players who gain a lot of confidence from being the go-to guy for a
Mhm.
specific position, knowing that they're really the only, or the best option, or the only option for that position. It might play into their hands, and it might boost their morale and their confidence. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Bugai is playing like he owns that spot. We saw that yesterday. We've seen it in recent weeks how he's been the most solid option right there. So yeah, I think that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I think that, uh, signing depth is never a bad thing. Like you said, right? There's a good thing of having go-to guys, but that's a lot of mileage they're covering, and they don't really have a logical backup, right? Like Tom Pierce,
Yeah,
I don't love him at left back. Alexander Guboglu, I don't love him at right back. And we're gonna get
yeah,
to those two guys later because they were coincidentally they were on the field and looked like much more natural positions. But
yeah.
the two of them can only play for so long before they're human. They
Sure,
need
of
rest at some point. They also need some
course.
competition. You don't want complacency to set in. So I do
Yeah,
think that some decent competition in those spots is definitely called for. Again, we'll see with the window opening up what's in store. But
yeah.
honestly, with this back four right now, I think they've got something good. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
No,
Uh,
I agree. This was a great, like, jumping point, right,
mhm.
for what's to see, like, with this kind of makeshift back line. It worked, and it worked well. It's not like they got by the skin of their teeth. I think they performed admirably, and they've earned another game, the four of them together.
Mhm.
And I don't see why they wouldn't be together next time out.
Well, speaking of earning another game together, and they've got one because it's a good segue into the midfield because Nathan Silva is not there for the next game against Cincinnati. Samed Piet and Victor Turi are the only two natural central midfielders at the club right now.
Hmm.
Um, Samed Piet did his thing, man, but I want to talk about Victor Turi because this is again another instance of him punching well above his weight or well above, I think, what his perceived weight class was
Yeah,
because he was brought in as again, a Samuel Piet. like for like substitution, or if you're rotating the squad, he's your quote unquote semi Piet. His work rate is insane. I
Yeah.
don't think I can't remember the last time I've seen someone in the midfield, at least, because I think of like Juan, like, yeah, obviously, who just
Yeah.
runs, who just doesn't stop running. I genuinely do think he gets more work in than like Mathieu Chouanière, and I never thought I'd say that
Mhm.
because that man was everywhere. But Victor Laturi, his engine is unreal.
Yeah. What I couldn't believe yesterday is, in the 90th minute when CF Montreal was trying to kill the game off in the corner, which they did for a long time. That was
Yeah.
like a few minutes of them just chilling in the corner. But Luturi was like, he was there helping out, supporting.
Doing
He was
everything.
running around. It was crazy. And like you mentioned earlier, it was hot in Texas yesterday, 40 degrees Celsius. Um, and he was running like crazy all game. He started at the base of midfield with Piet, as you mentioned. He ended up moving up a bit in the second half after some substitutions. And when Vilsain and Opoku came on, he moved back into the base of midfield. But it didn't matter because he was everywhere on the pitch, and it's super impressive. We've seen that throughout the season, but yesterday, considering it was a win, considering how things went, like it was really like a great performance from him. And I think it was a great signing because I think every team in MLS could use a Laturi on their squad. He's a plug and play kind of player, crazy engine, insane work rates. You know, great to start, but also like that's the kind of player you want to kill games off, and that's kind of what we saw
Mhm.
yesterday, right? Is like he was essential in killing that game off, whether it was in the defensive phase or just getting the ball up forward and keeping it in the Houston's half of the pitch. Um, yeah, what a game from Victor Lattori.
Yeah, I still have my concerns just on the ball because again,
Sure.
when you're playing at home and you're expecting to have the majority of the ball because you're playing against a team that just wants to sit back, I don't know where he fits in
Yeah,
because he's
I
not a
agree.
natural pivot. He doesn't really drive with the ball, so that engine is valuable. But I think really on the road, it's a lot more noticeable
Mm,
because
yeah,
again, like this wasn't like he definitely played above his usual level, but this wasn't like he was doing anything different from what he normally does.
no,
He was just
yeah,
doing it a lot more, and I think that, when you're at home and you've got 55, 60% of the ball, he doesn't fit yet. So, I mean,
no,
he's 23, right? He still has something of a ceiling. I know nowadays, if you're 18, that's your finished product. If you're not amazing at
yeah,
18, you're washed. But like, he's still
mhm,
23, he's still young, so there's still room for him to grow. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to get out of the starting 11 when you put up performances like that.
Yeah. I mean, I very much see him as a kind of utility player, to
Mhm.
bring up a baseball term, as someone who's good at very specific things. You don't expect them to hit home runs, you don't expect them to drive in a bunch of RBIs, but they'll give you a stolen base here or there. They'll lay down a bunt. They're good at the little things, the intangibles. They'll kill off a game for you. They'll put in a shift. That's exactly the kind of player we're looking at here. And great to have in a squad. I agree. He's not in a strong squad. He's not a starter. He's not a star player. For a team who wants to hold possession, who wants to build from midfield. But I think still a super super useful player, and we saw that yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough to complain about his game. I'm sure Nathan Saliba's watching that and going, "Hell yeah,"
Yeah,
because
he's worried about his spot.
I don't think he's got to worry
No, there's
about
no
his
way.
spot.
There's no way.
I don't think so. But
No,
yeah, I'm still looking for a playmaker in the midfield because they don't have one.
sure.
They've got three players of the same font. I still think Saliba is more of a Piet than a Chouanière. But again, that is a conversation for
I
another
agree.
day.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
take a look at the attack because I feel like that's where all the talking points are. That's where
Mm,
people are. Wait, you could do that? Starting with Caden Clark, you mentioned it, right? Flashes of 2024 Caden Clark. It was great to
yeah.
finally see him look like he was just enjoying himself out there. He was locked in, he was fighting, he was, talking a little bit of shit too, which is always nice. He looked fired up yesterday.
Yeah, well, he looked like he was free and he was playing free, and that's something we haven't seen in a while. Whether it's the type of constraints he felt or that a manager was putting on him, I don't know. But yesterday he was playing free. It was
Mhm.
you mentioned it in his body language, in his demeanor, but also in the way he was playing. He was all over the place. He was very much the creative figure. Um, in attack at up ahead in the midfield, really playing as a 10, but working really well off of Owusu, almost as a second striker. A bit like we see Griezmann do for Atletico Madrid, a bit of European football in there for you. But um, yeah, just the freedom of which and a creative player like that who moves so well, who
Mhm.
who who dribbles super well, but also has great vision to see them feel like they have that freedom to be creative on the ball. That that's almost the most beautiful sight to see in the sport, and that's kind of what we saw yesterday. And he was on for the whole game, right? Like he was there from the final whistle. So
Yep.
I mean that was impressive in itself too. Again, great work rate. Like he didn't stop running, and I'm sure it was that confidence of not only starting but also having a good performance. You can run for ages and ages when you feel that way, and that's kind of what we saw yesterday. Um, yeah, just a great performance by him.
Yeah, it's also nice to see him get an assist too. I think he needs that, but he's never shied away from the fact that he's at his best when he's enjoying his football.
Absolutely
I don't see anything different in what was asked of him. I really just
right.
think that's one of those days where he woke up and he was just you wake up, you're feeling good, you get to the field, you're having a good time, and just stuff works out. So I hope that this is the start of something good and not just like a moment that he's feeling all right, and then it goes back to what we've seen this season. Because again, he's not a bad like we've seen him be actively
Yeah,
good, like not just
yeah,
okay, but actively like excel at in MLS. So this isn't oh my god, where would that come from? It's more,
yeah. We
what
knew it was there.
happened in the first 17 games that we didn't see that. So I think that not just the fact that he was enjoying his football, but the fact that he was able to be effective made room for Pearson and Guboglu, and those two in turn also had arguably maybe not their best games, but definitely one of their better games. I mean, Alexander Guboglu definitely had his best game
Yeah,
since Donadel took over, since he
yeah,
left the wing back spot, not just in the assist, but he was unguardable, he was unmarkable on that
mm,
right side. He drew, I don't know if that was a penalty. They didn't really even give us a replay of that, but he
yeah,
definitely gave, that entire left side of the Houston defense a very hard time. So I
yeah.
honestly, I mean, the ball was phenomenal. That assist was incredible.
It
But
was.
just the fact that he looked like he wanted the ball actively. And again, what I love about Dante Sealy and why I think Dante Sealy's been so important ever since Hernandez Sintra got injured was because he was that focal point when there was nothing going on in the middle, or when there was, one-on-one situations. He would get the ball and he would just run at you. And I
Yeah,
think Guboglu finally got the message, like, I get the ball, especially if
direct.
one-on-one, I get to run at people. And so I think this could, again, we'll see again against a team like Cincinnati, who's much better organized, who is much just better overall, one of the best teams in the East. Um, you're playing at home, so we'll see if that can translate. But
Yeah.
all across that I don't know if it's a midfield through those three players, everybody was actively making each other better, and I think that was the first time all year that I've seen that.
Yeah, well, I think it's one thing you mentioned earlier, but the fact that CF Montreal allowed Houston to have more of the possession, to have more of the ball, and kind of wanted to hit them on the counter meant that they had to play more direct, which does play into the hands of someone like Uboglu, Clark too, and Owusu, I think, as we saw, right? Like what they are able to create on the counter. Um, so, yeah, I mean, whether it's the player profiles or whether it's a bunch of circumstances kind of coming together yesterday, that direct play, that counter attacking play played right into CF Montreal's hands. It worked. It worked perfectly. Um, it's kind of not really their style, right? As we've seen, especially like you mentioned at home, they like to play with possession. But it's almost like they're more effective, at least in the setup that they had yesterday, with that direct counter-attacking style.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that you know maybe that should be more incorporated into their style, because again they do use they still do try and play direct. It's just it's very clear that when they play long to Owusu or Rioni or whoever's up top, they don't have an idea for what comes next.
Yeah,
So it kind of leads us into a good question that Emil asked us today. Does CF Montreal actually have a clear idea of how they're building play? It still feels very ad hoc and unstable. It did feel
yeah,
kind of unstable last night, but the fact that you're kind of leaning into that chaos and that instability because you're playing off the counter, made it look a lot better. But in possession, I still don't see an actual philosophy being executed.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that go into that. You did mention that CF Montreal midfield, however depleted right now, also doesn't it lacks a diverse kind of portfolio of
Mhm.
profiles, right? It's whether you're talking about Saliba, Piet, or Laturi, it's three kind of players in the same mold almost. You're missing someone who's creative, who's able to spring balls left and right, or play with possession, look for the right pass at the right moment. And I think that speaks mostly about how the team is in possession. I think Donadell is a coach who wants to play with possession, wants to play with the ball and build, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every team can play that way or your team has the right profiles to play that way. It's kind of like trying to insert a square peg into a round hole, right? Or is it the opposite? I don't know. But
I mean, either way, the
either
expression
way, it
works.
works, right? So that's it. I think the team probably lacks the exact players Donadell needs to incorporate his style. Whether that's the right style or not to go forward, we don't know because considering how the season has gone, I don't know if we have an answer when it comes to that. But considering how last night went, like that worked really well. And sure, it was a squad that was missing a lot of key players, and it's not the kind of lineup we're going to see going forward to the season. But maybe there was something there because that was as an impressive of a performance as we've seen from this team this year, and it I can't be a coincidence.
No, absolutely not. I find it kind of funny. Also, Piet said, "I'd rather lose and play beautiful football than win and kind of just defend all game." Well, I mean, sometimes you could do a bit of both. It's not
Yeah,
the
I
worst
mean,
thing in the
listen,
world.
the FC Barcelonas of the world can speak that way. The CF Montreals of the world, I don't think so.
No,
You
no,
know,
especially when you've got like you said it right, like it's a team assembled with duct tape at this point because of
exactly.
all the injuries. Someone like Bryce Duke,
Yeah,
for all the holes in his game and the issues that you could have with this game, he is one of those players that does fit that profile of what they need. And last year, when it was just him and Saliba in the midfield together because of injuries and everything else, it was quite good.
yeah,
I don't know how it would fit in Donadell's system. There's a lot more running in the midfield than there was under Courtois, so I
mm,
don't know how he would handle the extra physical workload. But in possession, I do think that for better or for worse, this club is missing a Bryce Duke.
yeah. I know, and we haven't really seen him right in this system. Like we he could very well be the key to unlocking some of this play in possession for sure. I think one thing I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about Clark is like we've seen this kind of player before. I mean, like the direct comparable is Duke, right? This creative kind of attacking midfielder who has all kinds of crazy talent, can do some really cool things, but is very very streaky.
Mhm.
Um, and that's we've seen that with CF Montreal over the years, and I think it's also something a big thing in MLS as well. We see a bunch of players around the league who are extremely streaky, very talented, but kind of come in and out of form. And um, I mean, Bryce Duke is one of those players. I think it's been a while since we've seen him at his best. Hopefully, we will before the end of the season. But you might be right that that could be a player that would elevate this team's floor and ceiling. But whether we don't really have the answer to that right now, obviously.
We're dealing entirely in hypotheticals
Exactly.
until he gets back from injury. He still is not
Yeah.
training with the team. Um, he's making cameo appearances at training, just to kind of do his own
Right.
thing, but he's still probably a couple weeks out before we get to see Bryce Duke on the actual pitch,
Hmm.
and at 100%. But
Yeah.
the last bit I want to talk about in terms of CF Montreal is Marco Donadell himself.
Mm.
Um, this felt like a much just in turn with all the context outside, right? One win in 19 games, all competitions. A lot of key players are out. You're going on the road. I feel like this is probably one of the best coach games that Marco Donadell has delivered this season. And I think that honestly, the way that he didn't kind of fold when Houston pulled one back and he kind of said, okay, keep doing what you're doing. He didn't touch the
Yeah.
back line, and he let them kind of be. They were in the zone, and he let them stay. I really like the confidence he placed in them, because
Yeah.
one of my biggest pet peeves in soccer is when coaches, the second they lose their nerve and they go, okay, just throw as many defenders on the field as humanly possible, and then it becomes extremely negative, and then they concede, and it spirals, right? And when Houston pulled one back, they didn't spiral, right? He brought on Brendan Craig, and I saw Brendan Craig get ready, and I was like, oh shit, he's going five at the back, and oh my god,
Hmm.
no, he put him in the midfield, and they kept doing the exact same thing, and I was like, you know what, I love
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
I love the mettle with which he played, with which he coached last night.
Yeah. Well, one thing I was most impressed by yesterday was in terms of defending was the team defending. Like,
Mhm.
how often did we see shots in the box get blocked? Houston spent a lot of time in CF Montreal's box, especially near the end of the game, and there was so many bodies getting in front. Like, this is those are moments where we've seen the CF Montreal back line get cracked, and goals go in so often this year. But they didn't, they weren't letting anything through. Obviously, Houston got one goal back, but I thought, the CF Montreal's back line, but also, like I said, it was a team effort. They didn't let
Yeah.
Sirois see much of the ball, which is a good thing, right? Like, there were so many shots that were blocked, so many chances snuffed out just because there were bodies in the way. So there was a clear buy-in yesterday. I don't know if Donadell gave a very inspiring speech before the game. I don't know what it was, but um, yeah, it was a very well coached game. But I liked how the whole team kind of came together
Mhm.
and really believed in what they were doing. And I think that's what happens when you have a great performance like that. You score 3 goals, you're like, we're amazing, right? Like, let's make sure we get this resolved, right? Like, there's nothing that spurns you on better than like playing really well. And I think we saw that yesterday. It was great team buy-in. The substitution pattern, obviously was always going to be weird because of the options that he had at his disposal. Like I mentioned earlier, Vincent Opoku coming on with like 5 minutes left, two strikers, is not the kind of thing,
Yeah.
the kind of change you'd expect in a game that you're trying to where you're defending in. But it worked. They figured it out, and those two actually spent a lot of time with the ball in the other half. And so yeah, it was just it worked out really well. It was well coached. I think the lineup worked well, but also the adjustments they made, knowing that they were going to be behind the cuff, that they might have had to play without the ball and play on the counter. It worked well, and if that came from him, which I'm sure that it did, then that's pretty impressive, and it shows some growth, right? Some maturity, because I think what we've seen from Marco Donadell is he really wants to stick to his system and playing with the
Mhm.
ball. He very much believes in it, but I think yesterday he had the humility to recognize that that was not going to work and made some changes.
I mean, a little humility never hurt anybody. And it's
Never,
kind of easy to be humbled when you haven't won in 6 games, right?
of
I
course.
think and you concede, what was it, like 20 goals over the course of like
Yeah,
4 or 5 games, right? Like, I think a reality check was very needed, because there were also moments, before this run, where Donadell was like, no, we're sticking to our guns, and we're throwing bodies forward. And he did it with an even better squad, or at least
yeah,
a more a fuller squad, and they just were either beaten or just handled, or I think of like that first half in Columbus, where they were just played off the pitch, for example, and
yeah,
Donadell was like, no, we're doing this and this and this, and we're sticking to our guns, and they got their asses handed to them, right? So at least there's a little bit of, yeah, like you said, right, a bit of maturity coming into it, and going, okay, I'm not going to just be able to throw bodies at this and get everybody upfield as quickly as possible. We have to actually be pragmatic. And you
yeah,
know what? When you're, again, I think besides the Canadian Championship, this season is pretty much done, right? You've got the
yeah.
League's Cup, but like, let's face it, the League's Cup, you're not gonna. I don't think
No,
you're gonna win the League's Cup. I don't think you're gonna win the Supporter Shield. I don't think you're winning MLS Cup.
no.
This now is an effort in being pragmatic and preparing, you know, the next season. And I hate that this is, again, it's turned into a transitional season for for better or for worse. But you're going to get some signings in. I'm assuming you're going to get some signings in the summer window. This is now about focusing on the Canadian Championship, overturning a deficit against Forge, but it's also about now just smiling a little bit, just enjoying
Yeah.
a little bit of your football, right? And
Yeah.
games like this, performances like this, as much as they were like, it's a blue collar effort, a lot of people got to enjoy a lot of their football, right? There was still, the fullback still got to get forward a little bit. Bryce Duke, sorry, not Bryce Duke, Caden Clark and Prince Owusu still got to, do their thing. The wingers still got to do their things. The center backs still got to, have possession in some capacity. So
Yeah.
there is a compromise here, but I think that, Marco Donadel now has to be very careful because games
Sure.
like this are good. And now it's all about, proving that this is sustainable. And it wasn't just, oh, yeah, we went to Houston, which is notoriously like very streaky at home, and we
Yeah.
kind of caught them off guard. No, this is like actually us doing something that, we affected this and we didn't just, catch Houston in a bad moment.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, we can't forget who they played and the circumstances around the game, but you also have to give CF Montreal credit for a win that's well deserved.
Absolutely.
That kind of performance, I think I very confidently say would have given them a win against a majority of the league, right? So they absolutely earned that, regardless of the opposition. But we have to see it against better teams. We've seen spurts like of great play against better teams, right? Like they can take the game to some good teams in MLS, but the results have not followed. That the final ball, the finish, or that vital defensive play has not been there. You can keep up with these teams, but the difference in the end is those players scoring that goal, making that block, making that save. The likes of which we haven't seen often enough this year with CF Montreal.
Absolutely. It's just it's nice to actually get 3 points and have it be like a normal 3 points with nothing
Right.
world ending happening. It was just
Yeah.
you showed
Absolutely.
up, you scored, you won, you went home.
Yeah.
What a foreign concept.
Well deserved.
Anyway, absolutely. That's gonna do it for our recap of the CF Montreal match. We do have a little treat for you guys. We had the pleasure of sitting down with again, one of the players that has been the most impressive under Marco Donadel David. He sat down with Andy and they had a little bit of a heart to heart. That whole thing is going to be coming up on YouTube and on Spotify on Tuesday. Anyone who subscribed to the Patreon will get it a day early because we love you guys. We love everybody who watched it. It's okay. But if you want to subscribe, it's absolutely free. And you get, all of our content in advance. You get a sneak peek at it. You get exclusive first look at it. But we're going to give you now a short little clip. And enjoy lightning round with Andy and David Bugay.
So rapid fire. Tell me if I'm saying it wrong. Pierogi, Farikal, or Putin?
I have to stick with Pierogi.
All right. Now this one's a tough one. All right.
Yeah.
And you don't have to answer if you're not comfortable. Spal versus Molde in a game. Who are you rooting for?
I will have to go Molde.
All right. Most impressive stadium you've played in or visited?
I'm actually going to say Stade Saputo.
No.
I really like the atmosphere. The fans sit very close. The fans are good. So I really like the stadium. The vibes are good in the game. So I'm actually saying that.
All right. CF Montreal fans. Someone that went to Borussia Dortmund just said Stade Saputo. You're a fan favorite starting right now. Favorite player in the world, dude?
I've always liked Cristiano Ronaldo. The way he is, the way he acts, how professional he is. So I would say him.
All right. Favorite genre of music?
Favorite music?
Before the game, what are you jamming out to?
I don't really have one favorite. I just have a playlist with a bunch of different
Taylor
songs.
Swift? No?
Not really.
All right, so you just kind of
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Any artist in particular that you like? Okay, that's my jam.
I actually listen to Norwegian artists, so
Okay.
you wouldn't even know them. So
that's okay. Maybe our
Yeah.
listeners know. Who do you listen to?
Actually, a group called Balenciaga or
Okay.
Rock Boys. So I like them. They're really
Rock
good.
Boys.
So I listen
Love
to
the
them.
name. All right. PS5 or Xbox?
PS5,
Okay. TikTok or Instagram?
Instagram.
All right. Getting an assist or blocking a game-saving shot?
Blocking a game-saving shot. 100%.
All right. Toughest attacker in training?
In training, a lot of good ones. I would say all of the attackers, honestly. They're so tough to play against.
Oh, don't say that. That's such a... that is such... I'm going to give you a second try, David. Okay. Toughest attacker in training.
Toughest attacker in training.
The one that gives you a headache every time they come at you. And it can be previous teams.
Even previous teams.
Yeah, sure. We'll go. Toughest attacker you faced in training.
Honestly, I'm gonna give you the boring answer again. I faced so many tough players in trainings that like it's hard to tell one. He's one of the good ones, huh?
All right, last one for you. I'm not gonna bother anymore. Player you are most looking forward to facing, besides obviously Messi and Suarez in mind.
Besides Messi and Suarez,
which you've already faced, I believe. You were in the field with them.
Yeah, I faced all. I mean. You took the best ones out, so
all right.
Who else do I want to face?
Any other that you can think of that you're looking forward to? You wish you were in a one-on-one against?
Just like from the league, or you mean in
anywhere?
General?
The league, the world, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
I would actually love to play against Ronaldo.
Okay, your favorite player?
If that would happen, I would be happy. But obviously, he's getting older and older. He's in Saudi now, so I think it's. Yeah, not that possible anymore, but maybe sometime in the future.
Very, very fun interview. Andy said he was an absolute delight, so we can't wait for you guys to get in and watch that. Speak of the devil. Hi, Andy.
So guys,
us with his presence. How you doing?
Yeah, you guys see how I'm so. Hey, Olivier, how you guys doing? How's everybody doing?
Andy,
you guys
doing
can
good.
See I'm well dressed because I had a heck of a day. Mama's birthday, Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all of you listeners. And I'm here just to bother. You know how I do, Elias. I come in here and just
never stop bothering me. Yeah, your team wins 10-0 against some semi-professional players, and you've got to get in here and rub it in our faces, huh?
Is that what we're doing today? We're okay. Okay.
Wait, do you not know Bayern was playing in the Club World Cup?
Of course I know that.
Oh,
of course I know that.
I thought you were being coy.
10 goals against apparently some guy from Australia that has like a part-time job at a warehouse. New Zealand. Sorry. And yeah, so a win is a win, right, Elias?
A win is absolutely a win.
Absolutely.
I'll take it.
Fun group.
I'll take it. How you guys doing today?
We're doing good. We're about to talk some Roses FC.
Just
kept their spot at the top of the Northern Super League with a 2-1 win. Made their life a little bit more difficult than they needed to be. You go up 10 players against 11. You don't expect to concede and then have to kind of win the game all over again. But that's what the Roses did. Tanya Boychuk's 68th minute goal, if I'm not mistaken, gave them, again, very important 3 points to stay 1 point ahead of AFC Toronto. Look, what a world we live in. Montreal versus Toronto at the top of the league. What the hell does that feel like? Anyway, we're not going to get into that.
Seriously.
Tanya Boychuk got called up, man, and I know that we're
so did Latifa do.
And I know we're talking about the game here, but how important is that, man, for Ukraine? Like getting called up for the national team from players of of the Roses FC. We had Abdu that got called up to the Canadian team as well. These games are becoming more and more important in having these players play and show what they're capable of. It's almost giving them a platform to show to the national teams. I'm honestly very happy about that. That's a big deal to me.
Absolutely. And again, right, especially when it comes to national teams, doesn't matter what league you're playing in. If you're on fire, you're in good form, you're scoring goals, especially for attackers, you're gonna get good looks from whoever's picking the squad. Let's talk a bit about the game, right? Andy, we'll take a look at the lineup first. It's your classic Roses 4-4-2. You've got Karpenko and nets, and then the back two of Capadonna and hometown girl Stephanie Hill. You've got Whitaker and Smith out wide, and of course Bilbo and Hess in the midfield, and then the usual suspects up top: Paquin, Sauvé, Abdu, and Boychuk. at some point, it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? You're top of the
Yeah.
league, you're doing great, but eventually you're going to have to find out what the rest of your squad can do. And there's no fixture congestion yet, so you don't really have to worry about tired leg necessarily. But are you worried about the fact that there's not really many other players getting not necessarily full 90, but even like 60 or 70 minutes to kind of show what they can do in a full game?
Yeah, man, I think it's absolutely worrisome because we saw it a few weeks back when Bibo was out and Boychuk was out. You were starting to see other players that were kind of getting included into the game and all that, and it wasn't pretty. It really was. It almost felt like Rose FC almost stopped playing the way they had been playing the first few weeks when they came out of the fire of the gate fire. We talked about in this pod, Elias, how they were they were so on fire at the beginning, and then what's gonna happen when things start going down, when things start to make and it's just a little bit. It was a little bit worrisome. Now, obviously, when you showed that lineup, Elias, you start seeing more like those names that really impacted the field, the game of Roses FC at the beginning, and you see them back, and you almost see Roses FC getting back to what they known. But absolutely, to answer your question, Elias, it is concerning that the level goes so down the moment these other players are not there, and yeah, it's just one of those things that you hope that you can see improve in the next few months with the Roses FC.
Now, Ollie, the depth thing is not just exclusive to Montreal. A lot of teams that have, rotated the squad have seen pretty sharp drops in those specific positions, right? You saw it on Ottawa's behalf in that very game, right? There's 3 changes to the starting lineup, and there's gap, or Desiree Scott's not playing. That is a sizable gap in your midfield. She's arguably one of, if not the best player in the league right now, right? Even at her age.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
How much, again, this is the first year and you're still learning a whole lot, but in the next, maybe year or two, if we're looking a bit into the future, how much more emphasis is going to be put on squad depth? Or do you think that given it's only one competition, there's no real fixture congestion? Do you think teams are just going to kind of really try and load up their best 11?
Well, I think this is normal for a startup league to see the stars for each team really carry the load in terms of being the best players and being super important to the players to the point where when they're not there, the team doesn't look anything like it's supposed to. Like you've seen it, you see that across the league, as you mentioned. I work with the NSL as well, and you see how often like it's the same names on the team sheet on the score sheets. Ottawa yesterday, DB Pridham, she's been on a tear. She's been scoring, it seems like, every game. She's like one of the top players for Ottawa alongside Desi Scott. For Montreal, how often do we see Latif Abdou on the score sheet? Montreal has a great squad, right? But like Andy said, when those top players are missing, it's noticeable. So I think this is something you see across the league, and it's normal. And I think as the years go on and the league gets better and grows, then you're going to see the depth get better, because then there'll be more talent coming in because they'll see that the league is legit, that the quality of play is good. But then there's also going to be players that are coming up, young girls coming up, that are going to see that there's a place for them to play. It's motivation for them to try to aspire to a professional career in soccer in Canada, because they can do it. I think the levels will just rise, but I think this is very normal, honestly, to see in the first year of a league where the top players really make the difference, and after that, the quality does drop off quite a bit.
Olivia, you bring up a really good point, because I actually want to give an anecdote of a friend that I have that she knows zero about soccer, okay? But for one reason or the other, situationship made it that she has to coach a young girl's soccer team, her daughter's soccer team. And she actually just wants to know the rules of the game. She doesn't even know the rules of soccer. And what I told her was, hey, why don't you go to a Roses FC game? Just go. It's a professional level game, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you go to one and bring the girls with you and have them watch it? And then you can kind of, at the same time, you see a professional playing the game, and these girls can see like, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like. Now I know what I should look like when I'm on the field. So it's extremely important, as you mentioned, of like opening up that platform, right, where these girls going up the league can eventually, you know, maybe dream of being there and being part of that. So absolutely, just wanted to add that anecdote. Sorry about that.
I think too is that you see in the league so far, a lot of the top players, the difference makers, the names we keep hearing about, are forwards. And you know, when the best players are forwards, they're scoring the goals, they're making plays. If they're not there, it's a huge difference, right? You notice because there's no end product, there's very little end product. You know, you're not seeing as many goals, you're not seeing as many plays develop. When the top players and the superstars of the league are the forwards, are the top attacking talent, and they're not there for whatever reason, it's super noticeable. And I think that's just that's normal, you know, right? These are not criticisms at all. These are just normal parts of a new league. You know, I think they've, you know, every league that's started, you know, on recent years. I mean, MLS is like that too. It was like that for a long time. You could argue it still kind of is, right? Like so this is normal stuff, and I'm not worried at all that, you know, even by next year we're already going to see progression in terms of squad depth and the level of play.
Well, one thing Montreal, I guess, is fortunately very deep in is the position of center back, right? Julie Elias started the season; she was, you know, the go-to center back alongside Cavadona, and Stephanie Hill kind of made that spot her own. And we were talking about with CF Montreal, right? Center backs taking their moment and making an impression, kind of sticking into that spot. Stephanie Hill again with another really strong game. The goal that they conceded, right? It was a bit on her, and it was a bit of an error marking. But again, you know, it was a very complete game from the defensive group. Andy, at what point, you know, does this defense start getting the credit it deserves? Because everyone's looking, like we talked about, right? You got Tanya Boychuk, you got you know, Megan Sauvé, Paquin, Abdou. Everyone's looking at these attackers that are scoring goals and they're running and they're taking people on, but this defense at the same time is kind of holding it down.
It's 2 words: clean sheets. Yep. Unfortunately, that's the only thing. Yes, you can say clean sheets are, oh, the goalie got the clean sheet, but the reality is that it's the defense that are going to. Yeah, you can have a fantastic defensive game, but if you're allowing three or 4 goals, or even 2 or 1 every game, Elias, you can talk about it. She made a mistake here. They made a mistake there. There was and you know, we saw that as well with in the men's side and with CF Montreal defenders that sometimes you're like, okay, well, Joel Waterman did this and that, but it was a fantastic game. It was a great defensive game until that happened, and that's the only way you can get them any credit. That's the only way they start getting noticed. The rankings start going up is by clean sheets, not allowing goals to happen. You know, getting good clearances, clear clearances, and avoiding any chances. That's what's going to give them any credit.
Yeah, but I mean,
I think
it's still the best team. It's still the best defensive team in MLS, right? 7 goals conceded. They've only conceded more than 1 goal once. It was when they lost to Toronto. So yeah, you know, I think clean sheets talk, but
I think what'll sting from yesterday is allowing a goal to a team that was down a player.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, 100%. Like that's not something you want to do. It happens. It happens at every level of the sport, but it's never a good thing, right? You know, if you're up a player, you should be in control of the game. And it was a set piece. Those are usually how those goals are scored when a team is playing at a disadvantage. But like you said, it was a bit of an error on the defensive side of things. But yeah, you know, you got to be able to kind of lock a game down when you're up, whether that means scoring more goals or just not letting the other team even have a sniff at goal. You know, I think they'll be disappointed in having conceded. It's great that they were able to find that goal. You know, with just over 20 minutes left to give them the win. But yeah, you know, up a player, I think it's hard to allow a goal and feel good about it.
And that's a good point, because we can talk about momentum, right? Defenders control the momentum of the game, and when you're up a man or down a man, and you're letting the other team score a goal, you're creating momentum for the opponent. Which a momentum is not a statistic that you see. You can't measure momentum, but you can see it in the players' body language and the way they're attacking the field. They no longer feel like they're down a player. They feel like a complete team, and that's something that, to answer your question, Elias, again, is how do you control the momentum in a game? You're up a player. You should be able to do more and not be giving chances. Olivia, you're absolutely 100% right in saying that giving up a goal when you're up a player is it's a momentum killer, and it makes everything come in doubt.
Yeah,
100%.
I mean, they even gave up a good chance at the end. Pridham again had a great shot at goal. Karpenko made a big save. From remembering the replay, like Pridham was the only Ottawa player in the box around the goal. There were about 4 or 5 Roses defenders, and the fact that she was able to get that shot off. Now, she's a very talented attacking player, but you shouldn't be allowing those kind of chances near the end of a game when like it wasn't even like like I said, a set piece or anything. Like, that's it. I think the defense was a bit too fragile considering the circumstances yesterday. Still, obviously, this is still the best defensive team in the league, like you mentioned, Elias. But I don't know if they'd be too happy about how it went yesterday, considering they were up a player the whole for a majority of the game, and that should have been maybe an easier win than it was.
Oh, absolutely. Again, right. I feel like when you are up a player, when the other teams had a player sent off, that's where your creative players that love to exploit, that love to get into those spaces, they shine because there's just so much more room. And now teams are too preoccupied with keeping their shape that, they get more and more pinned back. And again, it kind of leads back to still what I think is the biggest problem with Roses is that they have no out and out 10 that is, the pure focal point from a creative perspective, right? Again, we saw on the Latif Abdul goal where there was, again, a nice series of passing and pressure. And again, that creates space because that's
individual work,
pure quality. But again, it did not feel, even though it was a collective effort, it did not feel like a team goal. Everyone kind of did their thing, and then Abdul found the space and made it work.
It was also a bit of a scuffed shot that created the chance to begin with, right?
Exactly.
Like it wasn't the smoothest kind of play.
Exactly, but they still don't have a conductor because again, Charlotte Bilbao, as good as she would be in that position, is too good in the double pivot with Ali Hess to sacrifice that. And they don't. And again, you have to at some point in your 4-4-2, you have to take one of your 2 wide players or strikers and sacrifice it to have a proper 10. Because again, as good as those 4 players of Paquin Sauvé, Boychuk, and Abdul are, none of them are a natural 10, and none of them are a natural conductor. And that's the one thing again that this team is missing, I feel, for them to become borderline unplayable. Right? They already can outwork, they can outscore, they can defend if need be, and they can, win in all 3/3 of the field. But having that player, especially when you're up 10 11 versus 10, having that player constantly occupies the midfield. And when they're too busy doing that, they can't even begin to think about trying to pull a goal back because they're so concerned. So again, I do think that, for all the quality that Roses have, they should be able to have someone that occupy that profile. But they don't. And I do think that, when things got rough a couple weeks ago and they couldn't really find any goals, let alone results, that was due in large part to the fact that their defense, their attack, despite having so many outlets, is kind of one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Right. It's go, and it's high pressure and it's high octane, but it goes in one direction. And so if you have a team that's well suited to defend that, I want to bring up the Halifax Tides game, right? You're playing against last place. All they had to do was be a little organized, and they more or less handled this insane attack that you're looking at, right? So having a creative midfielder not only helps you in these situations where you probably don't end up conceding a goal because it's just even more pressure in the midfield, but against any team, all of a sudden, there's this ambiguity that a creative player brings to the field that teams can't really prepare for because of the fact that, it's a purely creative role.
You know who they need? They need that Ottawa player. I've watched her a few times. It's Minhee Lee. Minhee Lee. I think they call
She's
it.
very good.
She is so good. She's beyond with the ball on her feet. The creativity and vision she has is incredible. And Elias, that player you're insisting so much of, and not just this episode. You've insisted on this since the start
for
of the
a while
season
now.
because win after win, Ali, he kept saying they're doing good and they're winning, but there is something missing. And you guys spoke about lucky bounces, maybe a lucky shot here. Guys, that has a limit. That luck, that little bounce that you get, it stops at some point. And then at some point, guys, in this same podcast, we're going to be saying they're just missing that extra bounce. They're just missing that extra thing, because the people probably covering Ottawa right now are saying that. They're saying, oh, they just got a lucky bounce. But that has its limits. So absolutely, when I look at a player like Minhee Lee from Ottawa, I'm like, she's got that what Montreal needs because she's experienced. She's 30. I'm seeing here she's 33 years old, experienced, and you can see it on the field. She has an excellent vision, and she really does go back and forth the whole field. Impressive, very impressive player by Ottawa.
Yeah, maybe we'll see the first NSL blockbuster trade.
Do it. Calling it here.
Those,
putting my bets in.
I'm definitely interested to see what the player movements are going to look like because again, right, like you said, Ollie, this is the first season. Everyone's kind of feeling each other out, and you're going to eventually get teams that have to go, okay, this is fun, but we have to start looking at like actual roster construction. And it doesn't mean you have to get players from elsewhere. Find a player you like. Maybe I don't know if there's going to be some kind of moves during the season or during like the second the window opens up, but I can probably guarantee you teams are already looking at roster construction going, this is good, but we need this. That team has that. I wonder if we can do something about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, let's move on to our final topic. We've been anticipating this Gold Cup. You just got here. I know, Andy.
Let's start again.
Let's start again. Yeah, let's start. Okay, let me play the jingle. Hold on.
Let's do the countdown one more time.
Exactly.
All right.
This Gold Cup is, again, arguably one of, if not the most important Gold Cup when you talk about tournament preparation, when you talk about capitalizing, getting silverware, getting anything out of this generation of players. Kicks off next week. Kicks off on Tuesday, I believe. Tuesday, the 17th. Let's take a look at the group. Canada's group. You've got Curacao, El Salvador, and Honduras. Honduras is their first opponent. I'm gonna skip past obviously we expect Canada to qualify, and I'm more looking at what exactly it is in this group stage that you're looking for to consider this a successful group stage beyond just qualifying. Obviously, Ollie, what from a gameplay, what from a squad selection, what from just an overall performance are you looking at to go like, okay, I'm confident that I got everything I wanted out of this group stage?
It'll be 3 wins from 3. I think anything less than that in qualifying obviously is going to be great. They better qualify, right? They don't have any excuses as to why they shouldn't. But 3 wins from 3 would I think give Canadian soccer fans a lot of confidence, not only for the rest of this tournament, but to show that we can be really good in group play. Ahead of next year, obviously. These are all winnable opponents that Canada can beat. We've seen them beat in recent years. Sure, Honduras has given Canada a couple of tough games. Same for El Salvador. Curacao, we haven't seen. I could not tell you when we played them, but obviously tiny nation. Not really worried about that too much. But yeah, I think it is unfortunate that Canada's missing some of its most important players, whether it's Alphonso Davies out, for a long time with the torn ACL, Steven Eustachio with Porto at the FIFA World Cup, or Sam Adekugbe just now tore his Achilles the other day, which was absolutely brutal considering he had just gotten back into the squad after quite a bit of time out. But I still think this squad is plenty strong enough to they can win, but they definitely have to get out of this group. And I think 3 wins out of 3 is very much achievable. We want to see them dominate play, control play, and score goals. They've shown they can. This is a very talented attacking group. bolstered by the arrival of Promise David. Let's see it. Let's see it.
Yeah, my biggest concern, honestly, is if I see Kyle Larin lined up next to Jonathan David in the first game, I'm gonna lose my shit, man.
Bro, why you always got something against Kyle Larin? What did he ever do to you?
I have nothing against Kyle Larin, but at some point, especially in the national team, there's a certain moment where you have to kind of hand the reins off. And he's not old, right? He's still in his prime, but just from a purely from a quality and from a competitive standpoint, he has to understand that Promise David does what he does what Kyle Larin does, but at an even higher level. And he showed it again in this Canadian Shield tournament, where everything I saw from Promise David is what I hope Kyle Larin would be under Jesse Marsh. It's the physicality, it's the hold up play, but it's an added athletic quality that Kyle Larin just does not possess.
100%.
And the other thing is, I don't want to see Jonathan Osorio. Right, the midfield is too talented. I'm not saying putting Nadal Saliba in there. Right, Ismail Kone is still the front runner. Despite how much I liked Steven Eustáquio and Nadal Saliba together, I think they complemented each other very well. But I think Steven Eustáquio and Ismail Kone are the two. The one thing I'm looking for, honestly, is just at least for the first Honduras game, I don't mind if they rotate the squad against Curacao. They should still win. Their B or their C team should be Curacao. But what I want to see, at least from the El Salvador and the Honduras games, are specific partnerships on the pitch that make sense. Right? I don't want to see any of these guys that we talked about this, Andy, a while back, like made men. Right, when John Herdman was the coach, and no matter what your performance was like, you were still getting in the squad. No, that's done. Right? I want to see not only a meritocracy, but I want to see these partnerships on the field, because if you're going to play a flat 4-4-2, it's all about partnerships. It's wingers and fullbacks, it's midfielders, it's center backs, it's striker duels. Everything has to be working, and that's my main thing. Because the wins, like you said, Ollie, the wins are a given. 3 for 3, you better win 3 for 3. But I'm seeing these connections being formed. And again, this is done with the World Cup in mind. This is done with bigger opposition in mind. How do these partnerships match up with the US, with Mexico, and then, with European teams and with, South American giants?
What I'm trying to understand is, because you're saying that you want to, these are guaranteed wins. Both you guys said, right?
These are expected wins. These are not guaranteed
expected,
wins,
not
right?
guaranteed.
You better win. Does not mean...
But
no.
Okay, expected wins. Call it whatever you may, right? Expected wins. But we've seen in the past that Canada has struggled against easier teams. They have, even though they have kicked ass on other occasions. But you can't. There's no game there. I'm sorry, guys. There's no game there that I can pinpoint and be like, guaranteed. It's Canada. There's no game there that I can say guaranteed they're going to win. And that to me is the troubling part. Now, Elias, I agree with you. I think what's really important is the chemistry that you're finding and all that, and maybe turning the chapter on the old and moving in with the new. But at the end of the day, because you say, okay, well, we want to compete with the U.S. and Mexico. Okay, well, where is U.S. and Mexico right now? Because Canada, in my opinion, is ahead of them in many aspects. I mean, they have talent.
You got to win. You got to beat them then.
They have talent, but are we setting our standard to just beating them and that's it? Or are we aiming higher than them? Because right now, maybe 5 years ago, we're talking about 5-10 years ago. Yes, you do want to beat U.S. and Mexico. 100%. I agree with you. But today is a different story, because U.S. and Mexico is having a crisis identity. Should I talk about the U.S. and how bad the U.S. men's? I think they won today, but whatever it may be, it's a clown show right now, right? But the point I'm trying to make is that Canada is kind of going through a very, very weird phase, in the sense that they have, like you guys mentioned, a riches of talent. We're talking about Nathan Saliba, Mathieu Chouanière, Osorio. We have all these players that there's a richness of talent. But at the same time, they've gotten this pool of talent has allowed Canada to start raising their expectations, as well as us that cover the team and people that watch the team. They expect Canada to win every game now because of that. So
how do you kind of play around with what chemistry works best and guarantee a win against teams that you need to win? So it's kind of a weird moment that the Canada men's national team is having, because if they lose any of these games, guys, and yeah, they do qualify, but maybe they lose one of them, 1-0, or maybe even a tie. Are we having that conversation right now where we're like, wait, but they didn't win?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it really doesn't even matter how you lose. The fact that you lost, the fact that you weren't able to score against these teams, the fact that, or even draw. Yeah, I mean, look, defensively, like every single facet of play, I'm expecting this team to be operating at a high level because again, a lot of these guys are in mid-season form right now. A lot of these guys have been playing MLS. A lot of these guys are there's no rust. There's no rust that you have to worry about. There's no people that are just starting their season like in other windows. This should be a team operating at full capacity. You have no excuse, right? You're playing in the States. It's not like you have to travel to Honduras, or it's not like you have to travel to a country where it's super hostile territory, where you have to play at altitude, where you have to play on a bad pitch. Everything is there for you to, purely from a quality perspective, be better than your opposition.
So if you're mentioning that, Elias, and I have a question for both of you, can Canada afford to be patient? Like, how would I say this? Can the fans be patient with the process now? Or is Canada in a win now situation? I'll start with you.
I think the difference to when we talk about these being patient and stuff with in football, I think there's huge differences between at the club level and international level, because at the club level there's a lot more interchangeable pieces than there is at the international level. You can't transfer players. Canada can't sell players. They have their crop of talent and they have to do the best they can with what they have at their disposal. Sure, you can change coaches and stuff, but I can't remember a country that has done very well after changing a bunch of coaches in a couple of years, right? Mexico has struggled with that, and recently, especially with the number of faces they've had, they can't find any consistency and they can't create an identity, like you mentioned. So yes, obviously the pressure would be on because everyone, I think, expects Canada to take this next step to show that they are the best team in CONCACAF, and then that they can keep up with, European counterparts, right? Maybe not the top European dogs, obviously, but keep up with some of the kind of mid-tier European nations and some of the South American nations too. The thing is, I think that Nations League loss to Mexico hurt, because I think as Canadian soccer fans, we thought that we were kind of above that, right? And then losing 2-0 at that point, it was a bit of a reality check to a team, to Mexico, who aren't even doing that great right now themselves, right? Beating the United States was great, but like we've said, the US is going through a crazy crisis right now. Like, I don't even consider them, rivals, because it's just ridiculous what's going on there. But yeah, no, I agree. This tournament, there's pressure to show that, we're ready to take that next step ahead of the World Cup that is going to be partially on home soil. Like, the pressure's on right now. I trust the group, I trust the team, but the results have to be more consistent. And I think the team has to have its identity, and the performances have to follow as well, right? It's a bit too erratic right now, too streaky. There needs to be some consistency in the play, because there's the players to do that. We just need to see it all come together. We got to get used to it. We got to get used to doing well. We got to get used to winning, right? Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, Andy, we can't go into games like this against Honduras and El Salvador and be like, you never know what's going to happen. It's Canada.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it should be, we expect something to happen. We expect good stuff. There's always the possibility of upsets and stuff, but Canada should be the favorite and should win, right? That's where we want to be. As we're close. We're getting there. We've been patient, but we can't keep taking these steps back here and there. It has to be consistent progression.
And just to add on to that, Olivier, and I'll let you, Elias, say that, but Canada now has become a target to these teams like Honduras, El Salvador. Like, we get a chance to show them, guys, we're going up against Canada. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be the other way. That Canada would look at
you
teams
go to
like,
Honduras and you take 8.
We can show them. Exactly. We can show them that. Elias, what do you think?
No, look, I agree with Ollie in that, like, the time for patience is pretty much over, because Canadian soccer has been patient since the last World Cup, right? When Jonathan Herman left, Jesse Marsh came in. Okay, now it's the time. Like, we'll be patient at the beginning in anticipation for this team to come to fruition, at the World Cup, and maybe the Gold Cup before that. But we are now a year away, right? The World Cup is in a year. If I still have to be patient a year before, then there's some alarm bells that have to start ringing, because when I look at this national team setup, there's nothing that's going to change drastically between now and the World Cup. So I'm looking for maybe not necessarily a finished product, but as close to a finished product as we've seen yet under Jesse Marsh. And I should feel confident looking at this team going, we could have the World Cup right now. And I would back us to qualify for the knockout round, right? That's the kind of level that you expect Canada to be at. Or if you look at this team, you throw in Alphonso Davies and Sam Atakubi, then this team makes the knockout round,
or
right?
Just Fonzie, and Eustachio in midfield. Like that's your Other than that, all the pieces are there right now in this squad.
100%.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's there. The talent is there. We just gotta see it come together. We love the vibes, right? Everyone's super happy about the vibes around the national team. We're proud. Like, the coach is great, especially at representing Canada. He's not even from here, but does a great job. Like, the reputation has been restored after a bit of a calamitous kind of era under Herdman. It was fine in the beginning until we started learning things. Right now, like the Canada soccer's reputation, at least on the field, within the coaching staff, all that stuff is fixed. The institution itself still probably going through all kinds of stuff, but on the field and stuff, like this around the squad, the vibes are good. We just need to see it, on paper, right? Because vibes are great until it's time to live up to the expectations you have. It applies in every sport. We love rebuilds, right? We love seeing the young players coming about. Like, they're really cool. They're getting some wins here and there. They're learning lessons, but at some point you have to start winning. Otherwise, rebuilds are useless.
Vibes don't win titles.
This isn't the same. It's not a perfect, example, but that's it. The vibes are there. Like, now let's see the results.
Yeah. And speaking of which, right, I don't know if it's gonna be Luc de Figueroa or Joe Waterman who's gonna fill Moise Mobito's spot. But again, I feel like the theme of this episode is center backs getting a chance at kind of taking it. So we could very well see, because again, I love Luc de Figueroa's game. I think he played really well in the Canadian Shield, and I loved what he brought. Joe Waterman, again, also had a very solid game. I think both of them are making a very compelling case as to be the starter alongside Derek Cornelius for this tournament. And I wouldn't be surprised if they've got a good tournament. Again, we're in a very good situation because it's a difficult choice to make. But, I'm very excited.
And sorry if you guys already spoke about this in the show, but I have a question for you. Is Joel Waterman out of the starting lineup for CF Montreal?
We kind of danced around that question, didn't we?
I just want to yes or no.
I mean, it's something
after seeing
something we spoke about.
Campbell.
Yeah, it's something we spoke about early on. How good the Campbell and Neal duo looked, and they're going to have a bit of run of play together here while Waterman is away with the national team. And it's very possible that when Waterman comes back, he might be the odd man out of that center back duo.
Ali, tell me now,
if we see some good performances and or wins
based on what you saw last night. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want Joel Waterman there? Do you want Joel Waterman to fuck around with what's going on there?
Well, I think the sample size, I'm not sure, is big enough just yet.
We've got a pretty big sample size for Campbell.
No, but Campbell and
Campbell,
Neal together?
but Campbell and Neal together, like,
okay.
Now, I think they complement each other super well. Like, I love the profiles together. Both very athletic, can move the ball, aren't shy to carry the ball up themselves and break out of some pressure. They're a good pressure release valve. We just got to see it more consistently, and I play against better teams too.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I mean, Cincinnati's
At
going to
home.
offer that, right? Cincinnati is
There you
going to be a
go.
very
So that'll be a
interesting
perfect
test.
test. You know?
Elias,
That
you
also
wanna-
means I got to
you-
go to stadium at midweek, which is just a fucking.
Would you
But
be
that's not-
willing? Would you be willing to have Joel Waterman as a defensive midfielder, Elias, or you want him back as center back? I'm asking the ugly questions that Elias loves to answer.
We also talked about this early on the show.
I'm sorry, guys.
There's
I'm
too many. Oh no, don't worry about it. That's what you get for ignoring us. No, I'm kidding.
I was
but-
celebrating Father's Day.
How dare you love your parents, Andy?
It wasn't my dad.
But you know, Nathan Silva, Samuel Piet, and Victor Latourie. There's already enough defensive midfielders. I don't think that adding Joe Waterman is the solution just because you want to fit Joe Waterman in the lineup. Anyway, that's a Marco Donadel problem and not Andy, Ollie, and Elias problem. Thank God, because that is a very tricky question, especially if those guys, especially if Neil and Campbell keep up their excellent run of form. But yeah, I'm again, we'll have a lot more to talk about next week when Canada is actually played. And we can actually talk about something because again, we're dealing with Canadian Shield stuff and hypotheticals and concepts. But we'll have actual tangible results to talk about next week, and I'm very excited for that because Honduras also has everyone's favorite Honduran, Romel Kyoto, who is called up in the national team and who is fit for once. So that'll be very interesting to see if he gets in and gets active because he also was kind of feisty last time Honduras played Canada. And I hope to see some more because I love good. I love me some CONCACAF antics, man. Only in CONCACAF gets some proper shithousery.
Yeah, yes and no until they work against Canada, which they always seem to.
They always seem to do. Anyway, before we go, we do have to give one person a very specific shout out. That man is Mr. Pat Valle, who for over 20 years has been working in the media relations and the communications and the PR department of CF Montreal. He has he welcomed me into the press box, welcomed Ollie, he welcomed Andy, he welcomed Hattie, he welcomed hundreds of journalists into the press box, helped them feel at home, and really just kind of made sure that they were in the right spot and in the right frame of mind, and also were able to ask questions. So again, Pat, if this clip or if this episode does manage to get to you, 100 thank yous. You've been super helpful and super professional the entire time, and you are truly an institution of Montreal soccer. And all the reporters and all the media people that have come through the club at any point are super thankful for the work that you've done. And yeah, hopefully we see you around doing something else because
you deserve it.
You're the best.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that happy note, Ollie, thank you so much for joining us. We love having you, and we'd love to have you back again whenever you can. But folks, thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with us. Again, a friendly reminder that we are on Patreon. This podcast will be free. It will always be free, but we've got a whole mess of lots of exclusive and fun stuff that you could check out at our Patreon. We've got paid stuff. We've got stuff for free subscribers. You don't got to pay a dime. Every single person that does, contribute a little something, we are infinitely thankful because you do help us put the show that you see today in front, in your screens, in your ears, on the platforms that you're listening to it again. So, link in our bio, link, wherever you could find it is the Patreon. And besides that, we will see you next week for episode 228 of The Ball is Round.